Hello everyone, with this video I'd like to go over the hands-on exercise about version control so we can get a basic idea of Git. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a remote repository, and that we can do either on GitHub or GitLab. Um, Most of you had an account on GitHub, so the way to do this is to click here on that green button that says, and let me zoom in, that says new. So now we should have our username here. If we're part of any groups, you also see that, so you can create it anywhere. But let's create a repository here, and I'm gonna name it C597. We can add a description. Now, we can either set the repository to private or public. Depending if you register with an EDU account, you'll have both options. Otherwise, I believe that GitHub only allows you to have private if you have the paid version. But for me, I'm just going to set it to public so we can easily clone the repository. So the one thing I want to do is I'm going to add a README file here. And we'll see why. By adding a README file, we'll create the repository directly. Otherwise, if we do not create a README file, then we will have a remote repository that's empty, which means then that we need to follow a slightly different procedure. But anyway, we have this repository now, so let's go back and see what we need to do next. We need to clone it on our machine, and here I'm just going to use GitHub Desktop, the software, which you see here. But the way to get the repository, to clone it locally, is we have to find the local Git here. So we can find the copy here. And we can either use this address or we can directly open it with GitHub Desktop. If we're using a different software like the command line, or we're using SourceTree, we need to grab this HTTPS address. Otherwise, we can just open it directly with GitHub Desktop. So depending on how you configured your browser, you will be asked what application to use. So here you can see that we're getting the autofill for the paths, and we can clone the repository. All right. So now there's 0 change files, there's 0 files really. So what we can do is we can open the repository in our external editor, which we'll need in a little bit. We can view the files in Finder. Here I have a Mac, so that's why it's Finder. Otherwise, you would have Explorer probably. Now you can see that there's only one file, one empty file called readme.md. MD stands for Markdown, and that's where, that's this file right here. So next we're going to go and write a function that adds 2 numbers and saves it in a file calc.py. So here's where we're going to use Open in Visual Studio Code. You can write the file in Jupyter Notebook and then save it as calc.py, but I think it's going to be easier if you just use some programming editor, like Visual Studio. All right, so we have, we open the repository, you see it here, C597, has the readme.md. The benefit of having the programming editor is now it can also understand Markdown. See how it's colored this, let me try to zoom in here, there we go. So now we can also add things, this is test repository. Now you'll see this green line here means that this is an addition to the file, meaning that it's an addition according to version control. So you see here, first of all, we have to save it. And now you see that we have this notification here. And we'll talk a little bit about this. But before we do that, let's create the calc.py file. So we'll go to the menu here, File, New File. And let's save it. And we'll save it as calc.py. Now what's going to happen is that you see now the symbol of Python showed up here. So now Visual Studio understands that we are using Python, and then you can see here that it's loading the Python extension. So we'll be able to do certain things like autocomplete, look at documentation, and so forth. All right, so let's create a function that will add two numbers. So let's name it def add, then we'll add two numbers. Now, for example, you see here that y is a variable, so it knows about those things. Let's add a docstring. So let's say add two numbers. All right, and then we're going to return x plus y. Again, you see the autocomplete. That's quite very helpful. Now, if we click on add, you see now we get that the documentation. Add two numbers. All right, good. So now you see here we have two files up here. Now we can either handle the version control within Visual Studio, or we can go back to GitHub Desktop and do it. That really depends on your preferences. But for now, let's see. Let's push the changes to the remote repository. So let's go back to GitHub Desktop. So now you see here that we've got two files. We've got readme.md with changes. You see this line was deleted, which has the new line here. Let's see if I can zoom in here. I don't think I can. Anyway, so we've got this. So now we can type a summary message for the commit, and we can just say created cal.py. Now we commit to main. All right. So what happened now? We actually committed the changes to the local repository. So the remote repository on GitHub does not know anything, and that's why you see this here. Push commits to the origin remote. You have one local commit waiting to be pushed to GitHub. We look at here the history. You see now we can click from one to the other. So you see the initial commit here has the readme.md file only. This one now has both files here. So we can revert back and forth between those two changes. So let's go here, and we are going to push to the origin, and you see that it's working. Now you see here it says delta, total delta. What delta means is that it only uploads the changes. So it keeps track of the changes, which makes it very efficient when, again, keeping track of the history of our files and also pushing. All right, so that completes the first part. Let's go to the second part. Let's assume I'm another member of the group, and we're going to pull the changes to the machine. Now, what's going to happen, the way to replicate that, I'm going to do this. I'm going to, well, let's refresh this here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to edit this README file directly on the browser. Although that's not really the recommended way. This is this repository for class. All right, so now we are going to commit the changes, update README. You see that everything's kind of pre-completed for us. So we commit the changes. So now what you'll see here is if we go to the repository, you'll see that we have 3 commits. We have the initial one, we have the one we did locally, and then we have the one we did remotely. Now we go back to GitHub Desktop, and let's fetch the origin. And immediately tells us that there's one commit from origin that we don't have in the local machine. And that's what we mean by pulling the changes. So we're going to do that. We're going to pull the changes. So now if we go back here and we look at the README file, there it is. So it's been updated locally as well, which is great. So let's go to the next part. We're going to create a new branch called multiply. So let's go back to our GitHub Desktop, and we'll go to the branch menu. I think you might be able to do it here. Let's see. Yeah, let's do it here. So let's create a new branch, and we'll call it multiply. Now this branch will start at main. So that's its initial state. So we're going to create the branch, and now you'll see that we've changed. We haven't published it yet, but that's okay for now. What we're going to do is we're going to go back to the function, the file cal.py, and write a function that multiplies the 2 numbers. So let's go here. Now you see everything's been updated on Visual Studio as well. we have here the multiply branch. So we know exactly where we are. Alright, let's go here and we're going to define a function multiply two numbers. There we go. Remember the horizontal formatting that I've told you about, so let's do that. Let's follow my own guidelines and create that to make it a bit more readable. So we also have the vertical formatting, so we have the blank line here. So let's now examine the differences between the commits. So let's go here now, we get the notification. Oops. And we can look at the changes. So from here you can open the file, discard changes, stage changes, but it's going to be easier to do it. First of all, we see the changes here. You see this line, the blue line here. So we get a visual confirmation. But now if we go to GitHub Desktop, we see something a bit more specific. So you see that only one file changed, and we deleted the new line here, we added the space, then we added the multiply function. So we're going to say added multiply function. And we're going to commit to the multiply repository branch, the repository. So now we again still haven't published the branch, so everything lives locally. So we're going to commit and push the changes. So first, let's examine the differences between the commits. So the way we can do that is we're going to show the changes here. Oh, actually, the changes. When we click show changes, it actually shows us the changes that have been made and have not been committed against the head of the branch, which is the most up-to-date version that has been committed. In this case, we've committed the latest changes, so there's no changes to be shown. So again, we looked at the changes, so now we're going to commit and push. Let's do that. Let's publish this branch. And there we go. So now let's go back to GitHub and refresh. Now you see that there we go. Multiply has recent pushes less than a minute ago. So we can switch over to this branch and you see it. So this one has 4 commits, whereas the main branch has 3 commits. And again, just demonstrates how easy it is to do parallel development, even if you're just yourself or if it's a team of developers. Alright, so we finished part 2, now let's go to part 3. A different member will fetch and pull from the remote, and then we'll switch to the multiply branch, and again, this is easily done, so right now we don't need to fetch anything, but if we wanted to switch, we go to the main. You see now that we have the 3 commits, but now let's switch to the multiply branch. Add a docstrict to the functions. Well, we kind of done that, so let's do something different. Let's add a comment up here. So let's add something here. Let's see, post functions. And again, you can feel free to format it any way you like. Sometimes I see people doing this. So again, whatever you like to do. Alright, so here, let's commit the changes now. And again, we're still in the multiply branch. So you see these changes. It already has default commit message, which is update calc.py. So I don't want to type, so let's do that. So now we're going to switch to the master branch, which is the main branch, and we are going to merge. So let's go to branch menu here, and we're going to merge into current branch, and we're going to merge into main from multiply. See, it checks for any conflicts. It says this will merge two commits from multiplying to main. So let's do that. There we go. And then we're gonna push the changes. All right, let's see that they're there. There we go. We have now 5 commits. The multiply branch has only 4. All right, and then the bonus part. We have the most up-to-date changes. Modify the addition function to replace the plus with minus. So let's do that. Here, oops. All right, we did that. So let's commit the changes. Here they are. We're gonna do update calc_py, commit to main, okay. But now we realize that we screwed up and we shouldn't have added that minus. So we go here, and this is that change that we want to get rid of. So we want to go 1 backwards. So first of all, if we hit here, revert changes and commit, see what it's going to do. Doesn't really do anything. So what we're going to do here is we're going to undo, which I guess doesn't do that. So let's see. I mean, we're gonna take the nuclear approach, but let's revert changes here. If we revert, it actually will keep track of every time we try to revert a change. So if we go here, let's see, branch. Trying to see where they have it on the menu, because otherwise we know how to do it on the command line, which is git reset. And we can reset directly to a commit. So I guess you can't really do it here. Well, in that case, let's go to our trusty terminal. All right. So, all right, and here we've got, you see here that if we do git status, says that the branch is ahead of origin main by 2 commits, and you see those 2 commits here. It's this one where we made the subtraction, and then this one where we're reverting, but we didn't really revert. One nice command here is the one that shows the history, which is git log. So what we want to do is we want to be able to reset to this commit here. After we added the multiply function, this one just added the comments. So we're going to copy this, and we are going to reset to this. All right. So now if we do git log, oops, hold on. There we go. So now we're back here, and there we go. We got rid of those commits. So if we don't want to keep the history, we can just reset to a specific commit and then essentially delete everything that happened after that. If we do want to keep the history, this is what we're going to do. So again, we went here, we did this, minus, we're going to commit those changes. So update. So now we'll go to history here, and again, we want to revert to this one. Revert changes and commit. So now you see that, again, we got rid of. Actually, we went even further back and we got rid of these test functions here. So let's keep those then, but you get the picture. So we've committed that, and we can push these up to the remote repository, and with this now, again, we have 7 commits. You see here how we reverted by putting the minus sign, and then with this we're reverting that by getting rid of that commit right there, which added the doc strings. So hopefully this gives you an idea of how we can revert and how flexible it is. Actually, we can go back and forth. Now, One mistake I made here is that I just used this default update calc.py commit message, which is not very good practice, as you can see here, because I just reverted to the wrong commit, the one I wasn't intending to. So I actually deleted the comments. And so always have a descriptive commit message like this: added multiply function, updated readme md. I mean, this is fine actually, but here we're doing something specific in the calc.py file, so we want to be able to have something that makes sense and we'll know what it means. In any case, hopefully this has been helpful, and I will see you on Tuesday's class.